You're listening to Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. In the blue corner, we've got Mr. Karle supporting Tottenham. In the red corner, we've got Mr. Kenner supporting Arsenal. Together, they will be discussing all of your football views, all of your football news. So join us here on Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar.
Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle. With me, Jeff Saunders. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Chris. Good to be here.
Excellent stuff. Now, we're going to be looking back at last round of Premier League games and beyond. But before that, as is now tradition, almost, your trivia question.
Okay, and you have to listen carefully to the words here. The question is, what is the highest number of club games it is theoretically possible for an English professional player to play in a season?
All right, we shall see at the end of the show. Intriguing indeed. Right, let's have a look back at one of the games that a professional footballer had to play for his club this weekend. We'll start with the meltdown at Tottenham Hotspur, I think. We're going to compare Tottenham and Manchester United because people are shouting crisis, crisis in both cases.
Yeah. Well, the two situations are very different. If for no other reason than since Ferguson left, Manchester United have spent £892 million and Spurs have spent 3 and 6.
Yes, I mean, Tottenham have a net spend, don't they, over the whole time Pochettino's been with them?
Well, it's a net benefit, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah.
In fact, if you added De Gea to that 192, it's 910 million in the past few years. And if you looked at that team playing, where is it? It's an incredible situation. Tottenham look tired. They look like a team that went on the pitch hoping something would happen. Even last season, I said to you while we were watching the Spurs game that I couldn't see where the goals were coming from, but they did come. And Eriksen would come up with something, or Lucas Moura would come up with something. Somebody would do something. And here, it's almost like no one is prepared to take the chance. Well, no one except Son. Son is always up for it, always moving the ball, always trying to create something. But the rest of them, they're standing around. They're not playing badly. They're just hoping something would happen. When I say not playing badly, apart from the defence, which is absolutely shocking.
Yes, there are big problems in defence. First of all, with Son, his work rate is incredible.
That's fantastic.
We've said on this podcast before that he's just one of those players that looks extremely honoured and privileged and delighted to be doing what he does for a living.
Yes.
And he will always, no matter what, try his best, and very often with a smile on his face, but he will always, to the last whistle, be there trying to do something. As a Tottenham fan, to me, the others look like some of them have given up, some of them don't want to be there. Now, of course, in the last transfer window, 3 of them wanted to leave. There are rumours that 2 of them have fallen out over some personal reasons, and other players have got involved, and that's caused a dressing room rift. Then there are other players whose contracts are coming to an end who haven't re-signed. All this is kind of mixed up, and I think is causing some sort of tension in the dressing room that Pochettino can't get a grasp of.
That looks to be right. There is definitely there's a very low energy around when you watch a game and you don't actually do any analysis, but you say, well, there's only one team going to score here. It's the team with the high energy. Like Brighton were the other day. They were going to die on that pitch. They weren't going to leave anything out on the pitch. They'll come off after 96 minutes dead. Tottenham players, and you looked at some of them, you thought, have you been in a game? There isn't the energy level there that there was last season. And certainly the defence clearly not talking to each other. How 2 centre halves can be that far apart, both left to right and front to back, and allow inside forward to get between them as often. I mean, one of the Brighton goals was an absolute carbon copy of 3 of the Bayern goals. It was the same goal played 4 times in a week. Did they learn nothing from any of those?
Well, it's funny, I mean, we talk about the Bayern Munich 7, Tottenham 2 in the Champions League that's been and gone since the last podcast, which was then followed by this 3-0 loss to Brighton. It's almost like they let in the same goals in both games.
They did.
If, you practice things on the training ground to make it happen exactly as you remember it from the training ground. It looked like they practiced letting those goals in.
Yeah, it was 4 identical goals. And you think, well,
how can you not learn?
Yeah, what is happening here? Now, Pochettino is not a bad manager. Pochettino is a great manager, and his record speaks for itself. With a positive spend, if you like, in other words, positive income rather than net spend. In 5 years, he's got Tottenham to the Champions League 4 times and the final once. In the 14 years before, Tottenham got to the Champions League 4 times. I mean, he's clearly a brilliant manager, but something has gone wrong.
Something's very wrong. A lot of people are saying, and I'm beginning to tend to agree with them, that if Pochettino stays, he's got to get tough and say to the players that wanted to leave, I tell you what, I'm putting you in the transfer window, you're out. To the players that haven't signed a contract, are you going to sign this contract? If not, you're going to join them on the transfer list, and get tough with them and say to the rest of them, right, do you want to play for this club? If so, let's get the hell on with it. Because otherwise, he's allowing the players' personal ambitions to take over, showing on the pitch none of them want to be there.
It looks as if none of them want to be there, yes. But for Tottenham, Levy particularly needs to do two things if that's going to happen. He's going to have to invest a sensible amount of money in the team in the next 2 or 3 years. They are showing all the signs of they're paying the price for not buying anyone in the last 2 years. Yes. And it's, it was, the point was made in another podcast the other day that it's like when you have a car and you don't spend any money on servicing for 2 years, the car will continue to go. But the longer you leave it, the more likely it is that car is going to have more than one thing go wrong with it. It's going to happen. You just don't know when. And I think that's where Tottenham are at the moment. They're paying the price now for that lack of investment over the years. So Levy's going to have to put his hand in Tottenham's pocket, no question.
Which is going to be tough.
And they've got to find a manager who's better than Pochettino.
Wow.
That's the issue, isn't it? I mean, whoever you bring in is going to be better. So who is it going to be? Yeah. And there aren't that many around.
I mean, just for the sake of continuing your analogy, because it popped into my head, you've got to buy the right players, haven't you, for the right situation.
Indeed.
If you're going to use the car as an analogy, the head gasket's gone, but he bought a couple of seat covers.
Well, that's the Manchester United approach.
The cracks, to mix my metaphors.
Yeah. But that's the Manchester United approach. We'll just buy whoever is around and available. And you look at the people they looked at over the transfer window in the summer. I mean, it was just a farce, an absolute farce. You look at that squad and you think, well, where's the plan? And then they give a £250,000 a week contract to Rashford. I mean, it defies belief.
Yeah, we're going to move on to United. I just want to finish with Tottenham in the sense that he signed Eddie Dombele, who we all thought was a very good player. He scored on his debut. Yeah. Tottenham had that kind of start, that new player scores on his debut, like United had that wonderful start against Chelsea and everything went wrong afterwards. We signed Lo Celso, who's hardly been around. He's injured.
Well, he's been injured, yeah.
Yeah, but then we signed Jack Clarke from Leeds United and loaned him back. He's not played for them since. Looks like he's coming back to Tottenham. So the new signings haven't really either played or bedded in. Pochettino started playing this diamond that even Sissoko has come out and said we don't feel comfortable playing in. So Pochettino started tinkering. You heard a rumour about him not even going to the training ground.
That's right, yeah. The stories coming out from there are that he's sat in his office watching it on a video screen and his assistant is taking all the coaching. Now that is the sign of a manager who wants to leave, isn't it?
I value him as a manager. As you've said, 4 times out of 5 seasons in the Champions League. Before that, hardly a sniff of it. A couple of Tottenham fans were saying on some of the fan pages on Facebook yesterday the same thing. Others were saying, but what have we won? And the answer was, well, listen, would you rather win the EFL, the League Cup, and lose most of your games, or would you like every week to go and watch your team win most of their games and have a good afternoon and cheer your team on for winning and being exciting and scoring goals, but at the end of the season have no trophies?
Yeah, I think that argument of, well, what have you won, it makes me so angry. It's an absolutely pathetic thing to say. One team is going to win the Premier League every season, so to follow the logic of well, what have you won, so the other 17 should just not bother then, you just hand it to them. Yeah. No, it's a competition and you compete and the results you get and the losses you have, that's all part of being a football supporter. What you want your team to do is play well,
I think
give you hope, give you promise. Whether you win or not is kind of irrelevant because, okay, Manchester City won the league last year. Now, how much good has that done them now?
Yes, now
you're 8 points past. Oh, it was crisis. Winning doesn't last. You've got to be in the competition. You've got to be fighting. You've got to look good. You've got to give your supporters something to hang on to. And Pochettino's definitely done that at Tottenham. Whether he's won a trophy or not is, or who cares? For every Premier League team, you win the the Football League Cup. Well, I mean, honestly, they don't care. When they get to the final, they care because you want to win it, and it's at Wembley, and it's a day out, and everything's exciting and fun. Yeah, of course. But for the rest of the time, most of them would rather not be in it, I think.
Yeah, well, I think the point is, if I lived in London and I was a season ticket holder, knowing the level that Tottenham are at, knowing the amount of money we have to spend and don't have to spend, would I rather go to Grimsby for a Tuesday night League Cup game and scrape through to the final and maybe not even get a ticket to the final, or would I like to sit in my season ticket seat and watch an exciting team week in, week out, maybe just scraping a win against City, losing 3-2 to Brighton, whatever it was, and watch my team give a lot of effort? Or would I rather have that trophy? I'd rather go in, week out, and watch an exciting team play. It's not all about the trophy at the end of it. It's about enjoying your team playing, and if they're not putting in the effort...
I think most football fans are like that. There is a type of person that calls himself a fan that actually they're trophy hunters. Yeah. And it's horrible and pathetic, actually.
Case in point, if you're a Crystal Palace fan or a Bournemouth fan, whatever, mid-table team fan, why do you support that team then? Because they're never going to win the league.
No.
Very unlikely. They're very unlikely going to win a cup final. Then most of them aren't going to get into Europe for years and years on end. If you're a Bournemouth fan, you're not going to see your team do anything spectacular, but you are going to see your team put in an effort and entertain you every other Saturday afternoon.
Exactly.
And that's what being a fan is about, supporting the club.
It is. And if you look at the support of the teams in the Championship, their attendance is fantastic for precisely that reason.
It's exciting. So as a Tottenham fan, it's not about winning the Champions League, it's about the effort getting there, and it's about what happens week in, week out. And what happened on Saturday against Brighton was not what you want to see as a fan. If they put the effort in and lost 3-0, fair enough.
Yeah,
or if they've been unlucky, but
that's
they won't.
Exactly right. Every fan, if the team has put an effort in, they're happy. And you see that from the players who win Player of the Year and voted by these fans in fan groups. It's nearly always the player that gives the most effort, that does the most. Like the ball tackling midfielder, as opposed to the striker. Because that's what you want. You're representing me out there, and I want to see that you're putting the effort in.
Let's move on then to the other pair of contrast. Crisis, not crisis. Let's play a game of crisis, not crisis. Manchester United.
Well, I mean, they're in big trouble, aren't they?
Well, definitely. I mean, we've said it countless times already on this podcast and on the radio show we do for 93.6 Global Radio here on the Costa del Sol. We've said... Is it too early to say there's a crisis? Eventually, it's not too early.
Well, we've had 1/5 of the season. So, is it too early? No. In the 17 league games since the PSG match, which was the one that got Solskjaer the job, those 17 league games have netted 17 points. That's relegation.
That is relegation. I mean, just lucky it's over 2 seasons.
Right. Mourinho's last 17 games, before his dismissal, brought 26 points.
Right.
So he is significantly worse. Manchester United are significantly worse under Solskjaer than under Mourinho.
I mean, the one statistic that Man United do have over Tottenham, since we mentioned them, but we didn't mention it in our little discussion there, is since January this year, Tottenham and Brighton were top of the table, having lost 16 games, the most games any team has lost. Brighton then beat Tottenham, so Tottenham are now 17 games since January this year. They've lost, and Brighton have lost 16. So even Manchester United have beat that. But if you've only got 17 points from 17 games at the end of the season, that puts you under the relegation radar, as you say. But it's worse than that. Again, if putting in the effort and decisions were going against them, or they just didn't have, as we say, the rub of the green, or they hit the post. But in the game in the Europa League last week against Alkmaar from Eredivisie, they didn't even have a shot.
They didn't have a shot on target.
On target.
Yeah.
Throughout the game.
Throughout
in
the
90
whole
minutes.
90 minutes, I know.
This is not the Manchester United that purportedly who they say they are and who they have been in the past.
Well, they have been, but it was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble is that we think it was recent because we're still believing their own hype, if you like. But it's that Manchester United is long gone, and I think they are in danger of slipping into mid-table mediocrity.
Yes, they are.
And extinction in the sense of they'll become irrelevant.
Well, yeah, and they're in their 6th year of rebuilding, aren't they?
Yeah, how many chances do you get? Solskjaer has been there since December. We're heading towards a year already. You know, all this season, most of last season, actually. How long is he allowed to have? He keeps saying it's a process. People have to be patient. He's even after they lost the game on Sunday, which we're going to talk about, said that the board need to back him, which is always fatal. The board need to be patient, the fans need to be patient, the owners need to be patient, and they've got to be brave and hold fast, be prepared for a bumpy ride because it's going to take time. That's max of desperation to me.
Well, it is desperation, isn't it? It's hard to see how Woodward gets out of this because he's appointed the last 4 managers, and if he fires Solskjaer before the end of the season, I mean, he's got to resign, surely. I mean, how can you as chief executive say, well, I made these 4 key decisions and they've all gone wrong and it's not my fault?
Yeah.
I mean, it is his fault.
Yes, I mean, he's the chairman. After all, he actually appointed these people.
He appointed them. Yeah.
I mean, there was on the Robbie Savage Radio 5 Live a phone-in this weekend. And Manchester United, you know what fans are like when they phone into these places. The emotions are on high, but this fan was quite logical in his analysis. Despite his emotion, he was very upset losing to Newcastle 1-0. He said it wasn't just that. It compounded since Solskjaer took over, but he said it goes back further than that. Manchester United are rotten to the core, to use his words, including the board, the chairman, the manager and the players, and he said they all have to be changed and they all have to go. Not literally all the players, obviously. He said but a complete overhaul has to start.
Yeah, but if you're the Glazers who basically own the club, well, the first question has to be, how can they have allowed this to happen? And secondly, they'll have to say, but you spent £892 million of our money since Ferguson left. What did you spend it on? If you're now saying this squad is useless, it cost £892 million. How can it be useless?
Yeah, you said they were good enough to spend that money on. So let's have a look at that squad, because I watched the game. I mean, they were playing Newcastle, who are no better, a lot worse. Neither team really had an abundance of ideas or flair, but United's problem, which, 5-6 years ago we would never have seen, they looked terrified and bereft of ideas.
Yes.
On top of which, they kept giving the ball away in the most ridiculous, without a player on. The crowd shouts "man on," so the guy knows somebody's coming up behind him. They were turning round and passing the ball to them to save them the bother of having to tackle them. Yeah. Almost that bad. The other thing this kid who phoned in said that he said we've got Mata, for example, who can't pass more than 5 yards, and when he does, it's only backwards or sideways. And this is, he's one of their better players.
He is, and Mata, I think, had 2 touches in the second half the other day, and Rashford had, I can't remember how many touches, 21 or something. Marcus Rojo, who came on after 59 minutes, had more than that. So Rashford was hiding, basically, but making himself almost impossible to pass to.
Find, yeah.
which obviously affected Mata, because Mata's game is short passes around the edge of the penalty area, and if you've got a centre forward who's hiding, that he just can't do it.
Yeah.
So he's got to turn around and go back to McTominay or Twanzebe. Yeah, I mean, something has gone very badly wrong. Now, for Newcastle, no, they are not a good team at all. They're a very, very bad team. But Bruce decided, OK, we're going to go back to what I said I didn't want to do, go back to what Benitez was doing, set them up in a 3-4-3, which actually became a 5 at the back. We're not going to attack. We're going to defend and counter-attack. Now, Manchester United are set up to defend and counter-attack. So the onus effectively became on them to do something, and they didn't have anything to do. The 2 lads, the 2 brothers in midfield, they had a great game. Now, how can the 2 Longstaff brothers, one of whom's played 12 Premier League games, one playing his first, bossed the £892 million team?
That was his first Premier League game, and he scored an absolute screamer. Great goal, well done from a distance.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is Steve Bruce was interviewed afterwards and said, why did you bring on a 19-year-old against Manchester United that hadn't had a first-team appearance? He said, well, I saw him in training and I spoke to the lad and he seemed like a lovely lad and I thought, why not give him a chance? Now, that doesn't seem like great tactics to me, but it worked.
No, absolutely brilliant management. It's brilliant management. And when you looked at that, him coming up to hit the ball, as he was coming up to hit it, I was going, oh, don't, because all I could see was the ball flying over the bar into Rose Ed. But you looked at him and he knew. He was, from the second he made the decision he knew he was going to score. It was fantastic. Yeah, and the young lad, he was absolutely convinced he was going to score. There was no question in his head, in his mind at all. That ball was in. And he took it like he was in the playground with his mate. You know how he used to do it in the playground. You knew you were going to score, and he did. And it's just fantastic. And look at how Andy Carroll reacted to it. It was just like the joy on Carroll's face for this young lad doing it, young local lad like Carroll.
Like himself, yeah. Actually, that's a lovely thing because, you know, when there can be a lot of jealousy and you know, egos about. To be delighted, I mean, you should be delighted for your teammate, but to be delighted for somebody whose time is coming while yours is going, it shows a lot of maturity, I think.
No, I think it's, you know, I think Carroll has accepted the situation he's in, that he can't play a full season of football, but
fair enough,
but he's still a footballer. I mean, he's paid what, 25,000 a week as a basic. If he comes on, he gets another 50,000 or something. So you know, he had a good day. Came on as sub. He's another 50 grand. Great.
Yeah, he had a big smile on his face. Yeah,
but he wasn't happy because Newcastle scored. Yeah, he was happy but he was happy for the lad, for what he'd done.
That was
brilliant.
That was what's so beautiful about it.
But it doesn't make Newcastle a good team because.
No, it's papering over the cracks.
It is papering over the cracks, and I still can't see them staying up. If Bruce can reproduce that effort and heart and some motivation over the rest of the season, well, they stand a chance. But they don't have players good enough to stay up.
No, they don't. Just going back to the two brothers Longstaff, they were interviewed afterwards by Match of the Day. Every single paper and all the pundits, you know, Lineker and everybody else back in the studio, and ever since then, the two brothers absolutely charmed the entire media corps, if you like. You know, people are talking about goosebumps and all this because they were so charming and discerning. One brother had to give the other brother the match, man of the match award, and the brother who won it, the guy Matthew who scored, said, "I don't think I deserve it. I think my brother deserves it. He played really well," and it was just all very, very lovely, and you know what football should be about. The young kid was delighted. He's a local kid. What he did say, though, was, I just hit the ball and just hoped it would go in. That I didn't think there was any skill about it. There was. I think he was being modest.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
He just said, I just hit it and hope, because in those circumstances, what else am I going to do? But I think there was a lot of skill behind that goal.
There was an awful lot of skill behind it. I mean, he's basically saying, you know, what Charlie George said in the 71 Cup final, whereas Brian Moore asked him to talk through his goal. He said, well, it come to me and I hit it. and it went in.
Yeah. What else is there to say? Yeah. I mean, he can talk through the curvature of the ball and everything, but you're talking. You're talking.
No, he just put his foot through the ball, and he knew in his, you know, he knew it was going in from the second he hit it.
So yeah, I mean, those two boys, the Longstaff brothers, great day for them. A day that they'll both remember for a long time. Still problems at Newcastle, but a little bit of glimmer of hope for them. At least they won a game, and it was against Steve Bruce's old team, Man United, so a bit of a booster for them. In the last game, Solskjaer said, I can see a lot of positives.
And nobody else could.
You know, with the Arsenal game, nobody could see the positives there. He has finally come out this week and admitted there's a problem. Problems are myriad, aren't they? I mean, they were just dreadful.
They were. It's very hard to start any sensible analysis. You just look at them and think, God, you were awful. Yeah, absolutely awful. I mean, where do you start? I mean, do you start with transfers, the 892 million? Add David De Gea to that because Ferguson bought De Gea. And De Gea, the last good player that Manchester United signed in 2011? I think he was. Although this young lad who had a very good game against Arsenal and had a good game at the weekend, Tuanzebe, looks good, looks the real deal. McTominay, yes, you can build a midfield around him, but again, he should have been sent off. It's terrible, studs up, knee-high challenge. I mean, it's a red card every day of the week, and how he only got a yellow is just a mystery to me.
He was very lucky. Is it the rashness of youth, or is that just going to be part of his game now?
Well, I mean, after the game earlier in the week, it's not well, I don't know what it is, but he did the same thing twice in the match during the week and didn't get booked for it. So I don't know.
And we've always seen, haven't we, talented players who do seem to get this rush of red mist. You'd see it with a classic example, of course, is Paul Gascoigne, so fired up for the FA Cup final, so fired up and so full of adrenaline that he just charged flying through the air at the Nottingham Forest player. Then you've got Wayne Rooney, free kick specialist, the long pass specialist, you know, had a very dedicated attitude, but every now and again the red mist would come down and he'd just lunge at somebody for no reason. And you'd think, why are you doing that? You don't need to do that. You're too skilled to do that. But some of these players just seem to have that point where it just comes across them. And McTominay's in danger of being another, I don't know, Scholes or whatever you said before the podcast
absolutely,
started.
but Scholes without the passing ability.
Yes, so far. maybe he'll improve his passing and get rid of that side of the game.
He's a box-to-box ball winner, isn't he? And every team needs those, and I think he's a very, very good player. So with De Gea, Tuanzebe and him, you've got something you can build a team around, but the owners have got to turn around and say, where did our £892 million go?
But that's it. I mean, it's all very well saying you need to have a clear out and this, that and the other, but I mean, these are people that have come in over the last 5 or 6 years that they've been building the team around, and now you want to get rid of them to build a team around somebody else.
And it's no good them turning around and saying, oh, well, we make so much money, we're so profitable, etc., etc. Well, as far as the fans are concerned, none of that matters. It's what the team does on the pitch. Now, there is a reality which fans don't want to accept, that by and large the owners are not interested in winning the Premier League, not very interested in winning the FA Cup or any other cup. They want to be in the Premier League, preferably getting into the Champions League, because there's a lot more money in that, and that's a sensible financial return on investment. The extra cost of winning the league is not worth it financially, and most owners are not interested in it. A lot of them come from American sports, where for the last 5 years you've seen owners deliberately not buying players they could buy because the cost was too high, and they don't, like baseball teams, we don't actually want to win the baseball World Series, they call it. We don't actually want to win it. We want to be in it. So we want to win our individual league, get into the playoffs. Yeah. But the extra cost, the 3 players on 35 million a year. No, it's not. 105 million for winning what? How much do you get extra? Do you get 10 million? No, I don't think so. And that's the position most of the owners in the Premier League are in.
Well, that goes a little way to explaining something that I was looking at last night, which we may discuss in more detail in a further podcast. This idea of what just taking part, because in Major League Soccer there is no promotion or relegation. They have a Division 2, which is the USL, but from the USL if you win it, you don't go up into the Major League Soccer, the next higher division. You stay where you are and start again next season.
Well, that's right, yeah.
So it's a bit weird for us to understand.
Yeah, their sport is set up differently. They're all franchises in America. So you buy the franchise for a geographical region, and the league decides whether that improves the league or not, being in that region. And that's different. It's probably the logical place that the English Premier League has got to get to be honest. And maybe the European football has to get to, because you can't, the horse has bolted. There's no point shutting the stable door now. We've allowed these clubs to become limited companies, the money-making entities, which is what they are. So sadly, why don't you go the full hog? Either do what Corbyn is briefly suggesting and take it back into ownership of the fans, and I'm not sure that's possible to do legally, or you take the next step and say, well, actually, okay, they're franchises in a European league, and there's no promotion, no relegation. And I think actually it would that in itself would hand most of football back to the fans in England.
That's a big subject for another podcast, really, this whole idea of giving it back to the fans or taking it, into franchises and beyond and making an entertainment package. Certainly Manchester United aren't an entertaining package at the moment.
Well, I don't know. If you don't like Man United, it's the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wonderful, yeah. Let's just have a look at some of the other games, because we are coming up to an international break, so we'll have a chat about England in a moment. But a couple of the other games, first of all, Brighton, we'll go back to the Brighton-Tottenham game, because I just want to talk about it very quickly. Brighton were the better team.
Very
Tottenham, they tried a little harder in the second half, but for the first goal, Hugo Lloris, the captain, which for me, having a goalkeeper as captain is a bit weird anyway, but also captain of France, horrific. As he went down to try and save the shot on target, he landed on his elbow. Thankfully, it's only a dislocated elbow. He is going to be out until at least New Year. That's the latest news. As he was lying on the ground screaming in agony, which you can imagine his elbow was pointing the wrong way, Brighton went and scored. I mean, it was a split second between the two things. I don't know if that's the whole thing's falling apart at Tottenham, isn't it? That's compounded it. It's not a blip anymore, is it? There is a serious crisis there, I think.
Oh, there's a serious crisis there, and something that has to be sorted out. How Levy goes about sorting it out, I don't know. My personal opinion, I think Pochettino should resign, but he's obviously not going to.
Maybe Solskjaer will, actually.
Well, I don't know, but
maybe they should swap jobs.
Well, if I was Pochettino, I wouldn't go to Manchester United. Why would you go there?
If he thinks he's having a tough time at Tottenham, he should think himself lucky. Meanwhile, two other teams sort of took advantage at the weekend of the lack of competition. First of all, Arsenal starting to come good, scraped a 1-0 win. Who scored the goal of all people? David Luiz. When he's not giving away penalties, he's finally scored a goal for them, but they did scrape the win, and that's what's important. You know, they are just 1 point behind Manchester City now.
If you went back sort of 30 years to when George Graham managed Arsenal, and you went into a coma, and you woke up last week and Arsenal had won 1-0 with a header from the centre half. You think nothing had changed.
No, that's it. I mean, it is one lucky Arsenal, 1-0 to the Arsenal. It is all of that.
Arsenal, yeah.
But they did get the win, and if you win 1-0 all your games, you're probably going to win the league. You know?
But they still didn't look good. They don't look good.
But the other team that they lost 4-0 on the opening day to Manchester United. People were saying Frank Lampard is too inexperienced. I still believe he is. They haven't got a transfer window to look forward to. They are banned from it. And yet they're starting to come good, are Chelsea, bringing in young players.
Absolutely, he's playing these particularly four young, if you include Hudson-Odoi, 4 young players, and he's playing them on merit because they're worth it and they're playing very well. And they've 3 of them in the England squad. You know, a lot of them. People are talking nonsense about, they have to because of the transfer ban. Well, actually, they don't. How many players did they lose? They lost Hazard, and they already replaced him with Pulisic before. So that's, there was no loss of player there. So they've only lost 2 players, and yet he's playing these 4 young players. So he's doing it out of choice.
Yes, because how many players would they have bought in a transfer window? Well, 2, 3 maybe?
Now, if Mourinho had still been there, and yes, he'd have insisted they go out and spend 50, 70, 100 million on somebody who was just as unproven as these lads were. Lampard has worked with them, knows how good they are, and he's stuck them in, and they're playing well. And they're in the England squad and likely to play. So brilliant. It's good news all round as far as I can see. And yes, Lampard may be inexperienced, but he's gaining experience as he goes, and he has shown that he learns. It
was away at Southampton, one of those teams that are just in the league and not going to probably win anything, but the fans go along, they're well supported. It's still a win away from home, something Tottenham didn't manage to do. Tottenham haven't won away from home since January, I don't think. But at least Chelsea, young team, are winning again. And as I say, maybe he's gaining experience. He's going to have to gain it very fast to keep up that momentum. Another team that's doing well is Leicester. Under the tutelage of the very modest Brendan Rodgers.
And Leicester are set up very well. They all know what they're going to do. They've got a good squad. If you look at them player by player throughout that squad, they're a good team. Tielemans, Maddison in midfield, Pereira at right back is brilliant right back. And the fact the whole back 4 are very, very good.
Yeah.
They're a good squad, a good team with a good manager, know what they're doing, they go out and do it, and they deserve their success. And there is a good chance they'll make it to the 4th place.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost Mahrez and Maguire in recent times, most recently, and yet they've adapted and worked around it and tinkered and moved on, which the sort of teams that are, let me say, they coming to the end of their run, Tottenham and Man United, haven't succeeded. So Leicester are doing that, changing things constantly, keeping evolving, making sure that things are staying fresh. And because of Tottenham's fall, I suppose, and the fact that Manchester United probably were never in the running for top 4. Chelsea finished 3rd last season, so Chelsea and Arsenal and Leicester, at the moment, do you think are the contenders to the second 2 places after Liverpool and City?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, and don't forget Wolves. Wolves are a good side.
They did have a bad start to the season.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
And they were bottom half of the table and worse, but they came good, didn't they? They beat Manchester City away, not something that many people can boast about.
No, they can't. I mean, everybody for a couple of years has known how to beat Manchester City, but actually doing it is a different thing. But that Wolves team did, and they deserved their win. And they exploited the weakness. We all know Manchester City's weakness is the centre of defence. Well, specifically Otamendi. What Otamendi is doing in a team as good as Manchester City.
I bet he can't believe his luck.
I know. I don't understand it, but that's Guardiola for you, and always has been. He loves his centre backs to play football. Otamendi just can't. He's not good enough to do it. Now, this is what John Stones was brought in to do. A footballer good on the ball, etc., etc. The trouble is John Stones is having too many of his special moments that
Well, there are a few things going on in his personal life if you read the back pages of the newspapers.
It would appear to be affecting his performance on the pitch, yeah.
Right, well, we've mentioned a couple of young players there for Leicester, but also Chelsea in particular. Just to round off the show, and before we have your trivia question, let's have a little look ahead, because we are on an international break this coming weekend. England play the Czech Republic and Bulgaria. The manager, Southgate, who, very cautious, I would say, manager, been touted as a future Tottenham manager. Not sure he'd fit in.
Should never be a Tottenham manager.
Not a Tottenham manager style. First of all, he's dropped Dele Alli. He's dropped Jesse Lingard.
Both on form, and quite right too.
Yeah, I mean, he's said, and other people have agreed with him, that it doesn't matter how famous you are, how well known you are, or what a big superstar in footballing terms you are. If you're not playing, if you're not getting the playing time, which Dele Alli's only just coming back from injury and hasn't been very good for a season now.
Yeah.
And Jesse Lingard, as you always say, on form has been dreadful, actually.
I mean, when was Jesse Lingard ever international quality? I've never seen a match where he's done anything that warrants being in an England team. I think he's put in the England team because he plays for Manchester United and he's English. He's not on form, because I defy anybody to tell me a match in which Lingard has played like an international. I've never seen it.
Are we so short of people in that position that he has to go for that?
Well, actually, maybe, because one of the drivers behind Manchester United paying 80 million for Maguire was that they needed another English player in their squad to come up to the quota. And that's why Leicester could hold out for the 80 million. So they know, well, you need an extra English player in there. You're going to pay it or not.
So that's another side to that story.
Yeah, and that delay in Manchester United doing the deal is what helped Leicester City. Because Leicester City didn't have enough time to buy Lewis Dunk from Crystal Palace, who they wanted to replace Maguire, they had to play Soyuncu, the Turkish player, and he's been brilliant. It actually ended up helping Leicester City, and their back four is better this season than it was when Maguire was there. Now, I'm not saying Soyuncu is better than Maguire. They're different players. They play in different positions. But it's a fact, and the numbers prove it, that Leicester's four-man defence, or five-man defence, because the goal is very good too, is better than Manchester United's. Back
to the England story then. So Jesse Lingard shouldn't be in the England team. For me, over the years, there's been so many starting 11 England players that when you say their name and then the words England international afterwards, it jars.
And Lingard is
Jesse
one.
Lingard is one of those.
Ashley Young was another.
Yeah, so you don't have a lot of time for Ashley Young.
Oh, he's a disaster at the World Cup. He's the reason that Maguire looks so good in the World Cup. Maguire covering up for him all the time. How many times did he, as a wing-back, as a left wing-back, how many times did he take on a player in the opposite half of the pitch in the World Cup last season? Answered twice. He got one cross in. And you contrast that with Trippier on the right-hand side, where most of England's creativity came from. And Trippier's back in the squad as well, after playing brilliantly for Atletico Madrid.
He's one that wanted to leave Tottenham and did, and he got his wish, and he's having a great time here in Spain.
Yeah, he's integrated
back in the England squad.
Yeah, integrated really well. The fans love him, the players love him, and his manager loves him. So,
good luck to him as a Tottenham fan. I wish him all the best. Good for him, and I hope he does well for England this coming international break. Jordan Henderson's another one that when you say Henderson into England international, for me doesn't work.
No,
doesn't trip off the tongue.
No.
But he's going for you for a little bit, Southgate now. He's going for the Chelsea guys.
Yeah, and I hope he plays them. I think Hudson-Odoi is not, he's not in the same league as Jadon Sancho. And I mean, Jadon Sancho is probably the best player in the Bundesliga this season. I mean, he should be one of the first names on the team sheet. But I mean, Mason Mount looks the real deal. Mason Mount does look like another Frank Lampard. I mean, he's very, very good. And Abraham may have the one thing that everybody wants their striker to have. He's lucky. He scores horrible goals.
Yeah, well,
that's what you want.
Wan-Bissaka's injured. Probably that's why United have all their problems. All down to that.
Well, it doesn't help because he showed last season.
One of their star players in the sense that he's got some spark.
I mean, last season he was the best tackler in Europe. His stats were just fantastic. He's not as good as TA Squared going forwards. TA Squared's delivery, his passing and crossing is better. Wan-Bissaka is a better tackler. He's actually a better fullback as being a fullback. I look forward to him playing. Trippier's better. Yes. Trippier is the complete deal at the moment.
So it's good to have him back in the team.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Czech Republic, it's Bulgaria. England won't get tested until they get to an actual final, play what people call a proper team or a team of world-class team. In days gone by, Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, as was. team to come up against. Bulgaria gave us a bit of a fright last time out, so we shall see. But
it'll be a test. Yeah.
They're two winnable games.
You would think so, but Czech Republic have got to a European or World Final more recently than England have.
Fair play, fair comment, yes. But I don't think we'll get past them, but we won't know till we get to the Euros.
We should beat both of them, and they should be good games, and they should be a good measure of where we are.
For football fans, especially during qualifiers, you know you're going to win. You know you're going to come first or second in the group. You're going to get through. It is fun to watch England. It can be very frustrating, I find. But what you're generally watching is players from your own team, hoping they don't get injured.
That's very true. Yeah.
So I'm just hoping Harry Kane doesn't get injured, because that would just be, that would leave Tottenham in a lot of problems.
Or if you look at Tottenham's results last season when Kane was injured, it's better than Tottenham's results.
Well, there
now.
is that. Son scored a lot of goals when Kane was away. Before we go to your trivial question, last rumour that came out last night, that among all the other players that wanted to leave Tottenham, now Son wants to go.
Well, yeah, that's bad news. That is bad news. And it does support the theory that, or let's say the hypothesis, because we don't actually have any facts to back it up, that that something has happened there. There is something seriously wrong behind the scenes.
There is something rotten in the state of Hackney,
the state of Cheshunt, where their training ground is.
Absolutely, yeah. Listen, hoping for better days for my team, Tottenham. Let's get to your trivia question.
Right, okay. The question was, what is the highest number of club games it is theoretically possible for an English professional player to play in one season? So, what do you think? Have a guess.
I don't know, 72?
Yeah.
Sounds a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? 72.
A hell of a lot, too much.
Right, the answer's 96.
How's that possible?
Well, you have to assume that the club is playing in League One. Okay, so not the Premier League, not the Championship, but League One.
League One, okay.
Last season, the team won the League Cup, which means they enter the Europa League at the second qualifying round. They make it to every possible final, with FA Cup replays wherever possible, and that gives them the following matches. League One, 46, including playoffs. FA Cup, 12. League Cup, 6. EFL Trophy, which they're in because they're in League One, 8. And Europa League 21, giving a total of 96.
Hypothetically, if they got as far as they could with as many replays as possible in all those competitions, they would play 96 games.
They would.
That's ridiculous. I mean, it's not very unlikely that it would ever happen, but a lot of those teams do play a lot more than the normal 40 games a season.
That's right, yeah.
Because of the quagmire of FA Cup. I mean, FA Cup starts at beginning of the season, and some of these teams are playing all those games on top of cup games and everything else. So in League 1 and 2 they have so many games, but theoretically 96 is the most a professional player could play in one season.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it?
And then there you've got Dele Alli moaning that he's had to play 3 games in a row. That's not true. That was just an example. But so last week, Jeff, you told us a very funny story about when you used to play football to a very high standard when you were a young lad, and you told us a very funny story about it. You told me one as we were coming to the studio to record today's show. I think I just wanted to share it with everybody, because for those of you that think that footballers are experts in football and know what they're talking about, and that's why they get on Match of the Day and everything, it's not always what it seems.
No, it isn't. This happened in another match that my team was playing in. I was in North London, and Arsenal and Tottenham had lots of houses around where we were. And across the road from the pitch we were playing on this particular Sunday, Arsenal own 4 or 5 houses. We played in red shirts, white shorts, red socks. The team we were playing, who were called Weardale, they were played in all blue. Blue. Anyway, this man walks along with his dog, one of these pathetic little handbag dogs, and he comes along, and our fathers and my mother are on this particular side, and he comes up and he stands next to my mother. Everyone looks over, and it's Frank McClintock, who was the captain of Arsenal when they won the double. And he'd been transferred the previous season to QPR, but it's Frank McClintock. He's standing there watching, and he watches for a few minutes, and he turns to my mum and he says, so Blues are winning then? And there's a couple of titters from some of the men. And my mother, who would never knowingly embarrass anyone, sort of puts a nice smile on her face, and she says, well, actually the Reds are winning. Oh, right, he says, and he's a bit embarrassed. And instead of giving up when he's ahead,
when he wasn't,
he comes back with, but But it's close though, isn't it? And my mum says it's completely deadpan. She looks at him and says it's 5-0 to the Reds. All the dads are corpsed laughing. And McClintock just turns round and takes his dog back home.
Swiftly walks away with his head hung low.
Yeah.
I mean, that's funny. So if you think it's easy being a pundit, you didn't get that one. You didn't call that one right.
Well, I mean, he might be a very good pundit, but you can't tell a match just by looking at it for 1 minute.
No, you can't. That's what we've been doing in this podcast, though. No, we have watched the matches, and as we say, there's a lot of crises going along around the 5th, 6th and 7th places or lower.
Well, I think that's where the excitement's going to be in the Premier League this season, isn't it? From, say, 7th, the Everton Cup, up to the number 4 position.
Yeah, well,
And
Everton are out of the Everton Cup already.
Everton are out of it already, yeah. And Leicester are out of it too, there. But will Manchester United even make it to 7th?
Before we go, I would just like to thank Stuart Hill Exclusive Wines, who are, of course, a distributor of fine wines, exclusive cigars and organic teas, and also a supporter of the arts. If you are a wholesaler and you would like to order at wholesale prices, you can visit their website, www.stuarthilluk.com. You can also call your order to +44, that of course is for the UK, 207 101 4213. That's +44 207 101 4213. Wholesale prices at stuarthilluk.com. This has been another edition of Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. A big thank you to Jeff Saunders.
Well, you're welcome, Chris. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we're going to see what happens in the international break, and we will be back next week with Steve Kenners-Kenton coming home, and he's going to be doing a couple of podcasts, so we're going to welcome Steve back. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode of Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar, the football podcast.
You've been listening to Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. Join us again next week for more of their twisted football news, all of their weird football views. You can find them here every week on Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. We'll see you again shortly.